Now, there's a bit of writing advice that almost everyone receives at some point in their education, and that's to avoid cliches. But why? Welcome back to the Young Writers Vlog. I'm Tyler, and I'm here to talk about cliches, and specifically why cliches are bad. Now, when we talk about cliches, there are actually two different things that we're talking about. The first being colloquialisms, and the second being plot elements. It's about statements like all's well that ends well. It's about curses that are lifted by true love's first kiss. No matter which cliches you're using, they're all equally bad. They make your writing seem disingenuous or manufactured, and they don't really add anything to your work either. They are, by definition, overused phrases and story elements, so even if you only use one cliche and you only use it once, the readers would have seen this story element before, and they're not going to be impressed by it. And if we focus in on this, we can understand that the reason cliches are bad is because they're, in essence, a sloppy reference. The phrase all's well that ends well references one of Shakespeare's plays. The idea of true love's first kiss was both invented and used excessively by Disney's fairy tales. These cliched phrases and story elements have a narrative history. You see, cliches don't come out of nowhere. They have to be used, and used in a way that's very public and well known in order for it to become a cliche. Cliches are inherently referential. They have an original use, they have an original context. And so what you're doing is making a reference to something without realizing that you're referencing something. And as a result, your use of it will feel sloppy or unintentional. This is why it's important to avoid cliches in your work, because it creates these messy and unintentional references and often just makes your writing sound unoriginal. Of course, it's important to note that references are not bad. Therefore, is it possible to do cliches properly? Short answer, no. For the long answer, we have a lot more work. By definition, cliches are what happens when you take a well-known phrase or a well-known plot element and shove it into a story without acknowledging its history. But what happens if you do acknowledge its history, if you do make a reference with purpose, with reason, and you're doing it to have some specific storyline impact? Well, then you're not really doing a cliche anymore. If you're including an instance of true love's first kiss destroying the curse in your story, but you're acknowledging the fact that this is a well-used story arc and you want to use it in an interesting or new way, what you're doing there isn't really cliche anymore. You're subverting expected narrative tropes. You're taking a new interpretation of an old storyline idea. Those are both valid storytelling strategies that you should not be afraid to use. And so when you do this, you're still using your own voice, you're still telling your own story, you're simply using a common storytelling tool as a jumping off point. And that's one of the big differences between cliche and not cliche. It's cliche to do the popular thing because it's popular and you've seen it a lot and you want to do the exact same thing you've seen in another story, but it's not cliche to see a popular storytelling element, recognize that it's popular and well used, and going your own way with it. It stops being a cliche because it's giving something new to the audience. It's doing things in a way they've never seen before. It's no longer a cliche because it's in your own voice. And so when done right, your otherwise cliche turns of phrases become proper references. You're taking well-known story elements and subverting them to bring something new to the audience. And so with this, we have both the reason why you should avoid cliches and how you go about avoiding them. It's simply making sure that your own voice comes through. Cliched phrases don't belong to you. They don't belong to anyone. They belong to a shared experience that everyone has of stories and culture. Cliched stories are stories that we've already heard. You don't need to tell us the story of Sleeping Beauty again. We already know it. You should focus on telling your own stories. You should focus on using your own words. We all have original thoughts, and we shouldn't be afraid to use them. So thank you for joining me. Until next time, have a good night, and keep on writing. Good evening, and I didn't really... It's a lot of crunching sound. I can't really think of many cliche Talking Heads openings, because really every Talking Head opening is a cliche.